Hey everyone, and welcome back to another movie from our hot news channel. We will talk about American celebrities who died today and in the last few days, as well as famous people from other countries in this movie. Please show your love and support by giving this movie a like before we go on. It means a lot to us. Thanks, let's get started. A podcaster named Jordy Glassner died on January 13th. She talked about her real-life story while she was fighting a brain tumor. 34. Through a post on her Instagram on January 14th, her family revealed that Jordy had died peacefully at home. The message said a lot about her in a few simple words. She was great. Glassner started the podcast Grief Street with her longtime friend Erica Rosemet in April 2024. They were both co-hosts of the show. Using their almost 30-year friendship as a starting point, the show looked at important times of grief, friendship, and strength. Jordy, a licensed therapist who was diagnosed with glioblastoma in August 2023, and Rosemead, a psychologist, talked freely about how they dealt with loss, healing, and moments that changed their lives. The show also had guests who told very personal stories. New episodes came out every week until October. As soon as the news spread, Rosemead wrote a touching tribute about a bond that began when she was a child. They grew up together and shared all of life's important moments. She wrote about the deep sadness that was left behind. Her message showed how close they were and how strong Jordy was while she was on her trip. Jordy's fans were asked to remember her by sharing memories in public, which would show how many lives she touched. Parents, friends, and fans sent her a lot of messages saying how her honesty, warmth, and voice made them feel seen, understood, and supported. People are still thinking about Jordy Glassner's story, not because of how it ended, but because of how openly and effectively she lived, connected with others, and inspired them through her writing. Princess Irene of Greece has died. She was 83 years old. Ending a quiet but important part of the history of European kings and queens. The secret office of the Greek royal family told everyone on January 15 that she had died. Her death took place at Zarzuela Palace in Madrid, with her close family by her side. Information about the burial plans should be shared in the next few days. Irene was born in South Africa on May 11, 1942. She came into the world during a time of chaos, as her family had just left Greece after the Nazis invaded. She was the daughter of King Paul I and Queen Frederica. Her younger brother was King Constantine, the last king of Greece, and her sister is Queen Sofia of Spain, who lives on. After the throne was restored in 1946, the family went back to Greece. Princess Irene decided to live a life mostly away from public power, which is different from many royals. She was a very good concert pianist and also very interested in Hinduism and archaeology. She was known for her intellectual and spiritual interests. She started the non-profit group Music in Harmony in 1986 and gave her inheritance to help it do its job. Irene and Queen Sofia were very close, even though they were never married, and kept good ties with her nieces, nephews, and even King Felipe VI of Spain. In her later years, she lived at Zarzuela Palace. In 2018, she became a citizen of Spain. The last time she was seen in public was at the wedding of her nephew and godson, Prince Nikolaos of Greece, in February 2025. Queen Sofia has quietly taken a break from public tasks over the past few months to be with her sister. The strong bond they had with each other. Scott Adams, who made the famous comic strip Dilbert, died at the age of 68 after a long fight with prostate cancer that had spread to other parts of his body. People in the Scott Adams School, an online group Adams made around his writing and commentary, shared the news on Tuesday. Adams talked about his condition in public earlier this year, saying that the illness had gotten worse and would keep getting worse. Adams was born in 1957 in Windham, New York. He fell in love with drawing at a young age, influenced by old newspaper comics. After getting an economics degree and then an MBA, he worked in California at a number of business offices. These events led to the creation of Dilbert, a comic book that showed the frustrating, funny, and silly sides of modern work life. By the middle of the 1990s, Dilbert was syndicated in more than 300 newspapers and had become a character that defined office life. Adams quit his job as a business executive to focus on cartooning full-time. He has since written best-selling books and won many awards in the field. After that, the strip was turned into a cartoon TV show. Adams moved his writing to online sites in his later years, where it was read by many and sparked debate. No matter the controversy, Dilbert made a lasting impact on workplace satire by using humor and observation to change the way generations saw business life. Matthew Kwasniewski-Kelvin, a co-founder and lead guitarist of the English rock band Black Midi, has died. He was 26 years old. The news was confirmed by a statement from Rough Trade Records, which said that he had died after a long and hard personal battle. The statement said he was a very good singer and a loving, kind person who meant a lot to those who knew him. Kwasniewski-Kelvin grew up with music all around him. As a child, he learned to play the guitar and watched his dad's band practice. As a teen, he went to London's Bright School and met Geordie Greep, Cameron Picton, and Morgan Simpson, who would later become bandmates. They got together and made Black Midi. Their daring, experimental sound quickly caught on and helped shape a new wave of British rock. He played guitar on Black Midi's first record, Schlegenheim, which came out in 2019 on Rough Trade. A lot of people liked the record, which led to big tours in Europe and North America. The band, along with bands like Shame and Black Country, New Road, became the center of a scene that was growing quickly. Kwasniewski-Kelvin quit the band before their second album, Cavalcade, came out in 2021 to focus on his health. The rest of the band officially supported him. In the end, Black Midi broke up in 2024. He kept making music in the past few years, working on other projects and putting out a solo album on Bandcamp in 2024. People remember Matt Kwasniewski-Kelvin for being creative, having an impact, and helping to give modern rock a unique sound. Bob Weir, one of the original members of the Grateful Dead and a key figure in the band's long musical history, has died. This marks the end of an era that shaped rock, improvisation, and live performance for generations. Many people thought of Jerry Garcia as the band's spiritual leader, but were kept things in check. A lighter touch to the melodies, sharp rhythmic skills, and a unique baritone voice that helped make the band sound for telling stories. As the Dead got better, Weir's jazz-influenced rhythm guitar playing stood out. It added new colors to songs while keeping the music calm and flowing. Weir's singing and writing gave the band a wide range of emotions and personalities, from early hits like Viola Lee Blues and Truckin' to later songs like Estimated Prophet and Weather Report Suite. He kept that same spirit alive in his solo work and side groups, such as Kingfish, Bobby and the Midnights, Rat Dog, and later Dead and Company, which mixed rock, country, blues, and improvisation. Weir kept making art for many years after the Grateful Dead's peak, putting out solo music like Blue Mountain and continuing to tour to loyal fans. That wasn't what his music was about. It was about getting together, moving, and being free to look around. There are a lot of albums by Bob Weir that have never stopped, a sound that made people want to listen, and a memory that will keep playing on wherever the road takes them next. 6. Sri Radha Subramaniam. In the fields of media, leadership, and new ideas, the Chief Research and Analytics Officer at CBS has died at the age of 55. She joined CBS in 2017 and quickly became in charge of all of the network's research and data. She turned complicated data into clear insight and strategy in that job, which helped shape how CBS connected with viewers. Her co-workers said she was deeply passionate about telling stories and strongly dedicated to the future of broadcast television. Radha was in charge of big companies like iHeartMedia, Yahoo, MTV Networks, and Nielsen before he joined CBS. She taught media and culture at Vassar College and New York University, which shows how much she cared about teaching and mentoring. A lot of people knew about her work, including awards for leadership, new ideas, and making a difference in statistics in media. Radha was born and raised in New Delhi. She moved to the United States to go to Northwestern University and get her PhD in radio, TV, and film. What started as an interest in journalism turned into a job that combined creativity, data, and understanding people. A mix of things that made her influential in the business. Radha is known more for her curiosity, bravery, and kindness than for the title she held. Her husband Joseph, her two children Tara and River, and the people, society, and conversations she helped shape at CBS and beyond will miss her. He was born on April 22. His name is John Joseph Nixon. 1937 in Neptune City, New Jersey, but the details of his birth would be kept from him for decades, leading to one of the most shocking discoveries anyone could have. Jack thought that his grandparents, John and Ethel May Nicholson, were his parents for the first 37 years of his life. He also thought that his real mother, June Frances Nicholson, was his older sister. This complicated family lie was told with such passion that Jack never thought about how his family worked or that the woman he called sister was actually the one who had given birth to him. The truth about Jack's parents wasn't known until 1974, when a researcher for Time magazine looking into his past for a cover story found it. June May and Ethel May had both died by that time. They buried their secrets, so Jack couldn't face them or find answers to the questions that would keep coming back to haunt him. It has never been proven for sure who his real father is, but there has been a lot of talk about different men who were close to June at that time in her life. Some researchers think June was seeing a married man, which would explain why Jack was raised as Ethel May's son instead of June's. Keeping the baby and the family safe from the social shame that came with being an unmarried mother in the 1930s. Growing up in this working-class family in New Jersey, had a tough childhood because of money problems and the strong influence of women in his early years. Jack thought that Ethel May was his mother. She worked as a hairdresser and beauty parlor operator and taught Jack the value of hard work and drive. In June, someone he thought was his sister became a showgirl and dancer. This added a touch of glitz and performance to his life that would later affect the careers he chose for himself. The family was matriarchal, with strong women in charge of the home life. Jack learned from them how to be tough, smart, and survive. Jack started to become interested in acting while he was at Manasquan High School. Even though his road to becoming an actor wasn't straight or set in stone. He wasn't the most popular person in school or in the drama club, and he didn't look like he was headed for stardom in Hollywood. Instead, he was a somewhat antsy teen trying to find direction and meaning in a world that didn't seem to have many options for a boy from his background. His childhood was marked by a sense of displacement, an awareness that he did not quite conform to the normal standards of his small town. Even though he still couldn't say what he was looking for or where he belonged. When Jack graduated from high school in 1954, he made a choice that would change the course of his whole life. As an alternative to going to college or getting a normal job in New Jersey, he moved to California to meet his sister Lorraine, who had already moved there. When Jack fell in love with the energy and possibilities of Los Angeles, what started as a short visit turned into a permanent move. He got a job at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer in the toy department as a gopher and general assistant in the animation unit. It was a lowly job, but it put him in touch with people in the entertainment business, which would become his world. Jack started taking acting classes during these early years in Los Angeles. At first, he didn't want to become famous, he just wanted to try out an artistic outlet that interested him. He learned acting from the well-known and respected Jeff Corey. Corey's classes were full of serious young actors who wanted to go beyond the basic skills that are often taught in Hollywood. Jack began to find something inside himself in these classes, an ability for emotional depth and truth that would later become the signature of his performances. Like most people, he wasn't naturally friendly or outgoing, but he was intense and ready to explore uncomfortable psychological territory, which made him stand out from many of his peers. When he met Roger Corman, the famous low-budget director who trained many future Hollywood stars and directors, it was his big break. Corman saw something good in the young actor and gave him small parts in cheap and quick B-movies, exploitation movies, and horror movies. These roles gave Jack a lot of useful experience being in front of the camera. In 1958's The Crybaby Killer, he played a troubled teen who takes hostages after a fight. This was his first part in a movie with a credit, and it set the tone for the complex, mentally ill characters he would later specialize in. In the late 1950s and early 1960s, Jack steadily worked in low-budget movies, often for Korsman. He was in movies like The Little Shop of Horrors, where he played a masochistic dental patient for just a few minutes, but it was a memorable performance that showed how he could make characters come to life even with little screen time. He was also in westerns, biker movies, and other genre movies that played in drive-ins and second-run theaters, not the high-end movies made by big studios. Jack was having a hard time making ends meet during these tough economic and professional years. He was pursuing a job that didn't promise him success or stability. During this time, Jack also tried writing screenplays, working on different projects with friends and other budding filmmakers. He helped write The Trip. Roger Corman directed a movie about his experiences with LSD, which shows that he was interested in exploring altered states of awareness and unusual ways of telling stories. This time of trying new things and struggling was very important to his growth as an artist. It helped him see films from different points of view and build a work ethic that would last him throughout his career. He lived a simple life. They often shared apartments with other artists and filmmakers who were having trouble making ends meet. This created a community of creative people who helped and pushed each other. When the truth about Jack's parents finally came out in 1974, he was already having a lot of success in Hollywood. It was both ironic and terrible that this finding came at this time. He had spent years trying to figure out who he was as a person and as an actress. After giving performances that dealt with themes of lying, secrets, and broken family ties, he found that his own life story had a lie that was deeper than any he had played on screen. He found out the truth, but both his mother and grandmother were dead. This meant he could never face them, ask them why they had kept up this elaborate lie, or get their explanations or apologies. Jack first became known to a wider audience with the 1969 movie Easy Rider, which captured the counterculture zeitgeist of the late 1960s and brought him to the attention of people outside of the exploitation film scene, where he had worked for over a decade. Jack gave a performance that was both funny and sad as George Hansen, a drunken lawyer who goes on a cross-country trip with two bikers. Being a man who was stuck between normal society and the freedom he saw in his strange friends. He was nominated for his first Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for this part, which turned him overnight from a struggling character actor into a talent that people wanted and who had real star potential. The scene at the campfire where George Hansen talks about Venusians and what freedom means became famous, showing how good Jack is at finding humanity and pathos in strange people while staying true to themselves. He didn't try to be flashy or get attention with his performance. Instead, it was honest and deeply felt, which helped people connect with a character who might have seemed like a stereotype otherwise. Jack suddenly had the chance to work with big-name directors on important projects after Easy Rider did well. Doors that had been closed before were opened, ending years of financial uncertainty and career frustration. After Easy Rider, Jack was very picky about the parts he took on. He liked playing complicated characters in movies that were meant to challenge viewers instead of just entertaining them. He played Bobby DeP in the 1970 movie 5 Easy Pieces. A man who used to play the piano classically but now works in the oil fields and doesn't care about anything. In the famous diner scene, Bobby orders toast, which became a cultural icon. It stands for defiance against unfair rules and social norms. But the movie's real strength came from how it looked at loneliness and how impossible it is to escape one's past. Jack's performance as a man stuck between two worlds who didn't fully fit in either one moved both audiences and critics, and it earned him his first nomination for an Academy Award for Best Actor. In Mike Nichols' 1971 film Carnal Knowledge, Jack played Jonathan, a character who changes over the course of the movie's decades-long look at how men felt about women and sexuality during the sexual revolution. It was a darker and more sexist part than anything he had played before, which required him to play a guy whose emotional problems and inability to connect with women in a real way get worse over time. Jack handled the character without passing judgment. He saw the humanity in Jonathan even when he was at his worst, but he never excused his behavior. This created a portrait of men that was both repulsive and compelling because it was honest about how men think and act. In The Last Detail, which came out in 1973, Jack played Badusky, a Navy petty officer whose job it was to take a young sailor to prison. It was one of his most physically and mentally intense roles. Jack was able to show both his comedic timing and his justified anger by having his character feel more sorry for the prisoner and more angry at the military system for putting a kid in jail for a small crime. The bad language and rough exterior of the character hid a basic goodness that Jack brought to the surface without being sentimental. This earned him another Academy Award nomination and solidified his status as one of the best actors of his generation. Then came Chinatown in 1974, Roman Polanski's neo-noir classic. Many people think Jack gave his best performance in the movie and think it is one of the best movies ever made. As Private Detective Jake Sheet, Jack played the standard noir lead character updated for a more cynical time, a man who thinks he knows how bad the world is but is shocked to find out how much worse it is than he thought. He gave a subtle and controlled performance, using facial emotions and body language along with words to show how horrified Jake is getting about what he finds out. Polanski's famous line, "Forget about it because it's Chinatown," yelled out at the audience at the end of the film, which was a rejection of Hollywood norms where justice is done and heroes save the day. And Jack's shocked last look showed how heartbreaking it is for a man to have failed at doing the right thing in a world that punishes those who do. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which came out in 1975 and won Jack his first Academy Award for Best Actor, is still one of his most famous roles. Jack created a character called Randall McMurphy, a prisoner who fakes mental illness to avoid working, but ends up stuck in a psychiatric ward where the strict nurse Ratchet controls him. This character stood for rebellion, vitality, and the human spirit's refusal to be broken by institutional power. His performance had both funny and sad parts, creating real moments of happiness and laughter before the heartbreaking ending, in which McMurphy is lobotomized and put into a vegetative state by a system that can't handle his defiance. Jack had to lead a large ensemble group and also go through the horrible ending where his character is killed. He gave it his all in both parts, organizing the patients and teaching them how to play basketball in his scenes. Were full of life and energy, which made McMurphy's final fate even worse. They were taken on an illegal fishing trip. The movie won every major Academy Award, including Best Picture, Best Director for Milos Forman, Best Actor for Jack, Best Actress for Louise Fletcher as Nurse Ratched, and Best Adapted Screenplay. It is one of only 2 movies in history to do this. Jack continued to take risks with his role choices in the late 1970s and early 1980s, starring in movies that were both big hits and big failures. In the 1980 movie The Shining, directed by Stanley Kubrick, Jack played Jack Torrance, a writer who goes crazy while working as the winter manager at the remote Overlook Hotel. People have talked about his act for decades. Some critics said that he played the character too broadly and made him too clearly crazy from the start, while others said that he brought a lot of intensity and commitment to the most extreme parts of the role. The scene with the axe where he cuts through a door and says the made-up line about being at home became one of the most famous images in movie history. People may have problems with the act, but it will always be a part of popular culture. In Red, Warren Beatty's epic about American journalist John Reed and the Russian Revolution, Jack played playwright Eugene O'Neill in a supporting part. This earned him another Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. The way he portrayed O'Neill's troubled relationship with Diane Keaton's character, Louise Bryant, gave the movie's long historical story emotional support. And Jack added depth and sadness to scenes that might have been lost in the huge size of the show. In 1983's Terms of Endearment, Jack played Garrett Breedlove, a former astronaut who wants to date his older neighbor played by Shirley MacLaine. The role was more straightforwardly charming, and it earned him his second Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. It also showed that he could play characters other than the intense, troubled ones that had become his trademark. In John Huston's 1985 movie Prissy's Honor, Jack played a stupid hitman who falls in love with another killer, played by Kathleen Turner. It was a dark comedy that let him explore comedic ground while keeping a threat level high. Batman gave the famous speech in court about how we can't handle the truth and the witches of Eastwick and A Few Good Men. As Good as It Gets, in which he played an obsessive-compulsive novelist who learns to open up about Schmidt, where he played a recently retired man who has to face the emptiness in his life, earned him his third Best Actor Oscar. The Departed, in which he received another Oscar nomination, also did well. All of these movies showed that Jack could stay interesting and relevant across decades in changing Hollywood landscapes. He has been making movies since the late 1950s and up to the early 2000s. Including more than 60 movies and 12 Oscar nods, which shows how long he has been working and how consistently good he is. He worked with almost all of the big directors of the time, from Antonioni to Kubrick to Scorsese, and created a cast that includes some of the most memorable characters in movie history. He had an effect on actors who played difficult parts, not just on the roles he played himself. Shown that truth and authenticity could live together with a larger-than-life on-screen personality. As Jack got older, into his 70s and 80s, people started to worry about his health. However, he had always kept his personal life pretty private, which made it hard to get solid information. Jack was usually very quiet about his physical and mental health, which let rumors fill the void left by his silence. This is in contrast to many celebs who spill every detail of their medical journeys. But people who knew him well or saw him in public started to notice changes that suggested getting older was affecting him in ways that were different from usual decline. Between 2011 and 2012, the first important public conversations about Jack's health began. When rumors started to spread that he was having memory and thinking problems that made it hard for him to work. Friends and co-workers mentioned that Jack was having trouble remembering lines, that his once famous focus and preparation were not working as well as they used to, and that he seemed lost or confused in situations that would not have been hard for him before. These diagnoses were not ones that Jack or his agents gave me, but rather from people in the business who had worked with him or met him in social situations and seen clear changes in his mental sharpness. There were more and more rumors that Jack might have dementia or Alzheimer's disease, which take away people's memories, cognitive skills, and eventually their sense of self. For an actor whose reputation was built on being smart, having complex emotions, and being able to play roles completely honestly, the thought of losing these abilities was a very bad thing that could happen. People noticed how ironic it was that Jack had played characters in movies who were losing their minds and abilities for a long time, exploring these themes in dramatic ways long before he had to deal with them himself. That same year, Radar Online and other celebrity news sites said that Jack had been diagnosed with dementia and that his memory had gotten so bad that he couldn't remember many of the famous movies he had directed. Reports say that people close to the actor said Jack's condition had gotten a lot worse, that he wasn't seen in public very often, and that he had pretty much quit acting, not because he wanted to, but because his mental state made it too dangerous for him to keep working. Not possible. Reports said that he was living alone and confused in his Mulholland Drive compound, where servants took care of his needs. He used to be a very active person. That being said, Jack, his family, or his representatives never publicly confirmed these reports. This made people wonder if they were true and what was really going on with his health. Since there wasn't any solid information, there was a lot of guesswork. Tabloids wrote stories about his health problems, but more reliable news sources were careful to avoid sharing medical information that they didn't have proof of. It was clear that Jack had quit acting in movies after 2010's How Do You Know, ending a career that had lasted more than 50 years. However, he had not officially retired or given any reason for his absence from the screen. People who support Jack's privacy say that he has every right to deal with his health problems without the public seeing them. They say that his gifts to film speak for themselves, so there is no need for a detailed medical account of his declining years. Others disagree, saying that famous people who have gotten praise and money from their fame should be honest about serious health problems. Especially when those problems could help spread information or lessen the shame surrounding conditions like dementia that affect a lot of people around the world. These two points of view are at odds with each other because they both believe that the public has a right to know about famous people's private lives. Besides the problems with his memory, Jack has had other health problems over the years that are linked to getting older and the way he lives. Throughout his career, he was known for not holding back when it came to enjoying life's pleasures, whether that meant indulging in rich foods, drinking alcohol, smoking marijuana, or keeping up a strong love life well into his old age. This way of living helped him build an image as someone who lived fully and honestly, but it also meant that his body bore the effects of decades of overindulging. Over the course of his later years, Jack's weight changes became more noticeable. He looked noticeably bigger in public in the 2000s than he did in earlier decades. Photographs from Jack's countless Lakers games over the years as one of the team's most famous and loyal fans showed a man who had aged a great deal. His face was fuller and more lined, and he moved more slowly and deliberately than the lively presence fans remembered from his movies. His place on the court became almost as famous as Jack himself. A place where both famous people and regular fans could catch glimpses of the renowned actor enjoying the sport he loved. But even these appearances happened less often over time, and Jack finally stopped going regularly. This led to more rumors about his physical ability to get around in public and keep up the stamina needed for late-night games. Jack's back problems have also been talked about over the years. He was said to be in constant pain because of years of hard physical work on movie sets and the normal wear and tear that comes with getting older. People with back pain are typically disabled and hard to treat. This is especially true for older people whose bodies are less able to heal and who are more likely to have bad outcomes from surgery or aggressive pain management. It's still not clear if these problems made him withdraw from public life or were just part of the set of age-related issues he was dealing with. However, people who have dealt with chronic pain know how it can lower quality of life and make things that were once easy feel impossible. Because Jack hasn't been seen or photographed in public in recent months, there was a lack of information that led to a lot of guesswork. Some news stories said he was pretty much stuck at home and spent his days watching TV or looking out at the Los Angeles city. The great works of art that were all around him were silent witnesses to his decline. Others were a little more positive, saying that even though his memory and cognitive abilities had gotten worse, he still had times of clarity and felt close to family and old friends who came to see him often. Without proof from trustworthy sources, these stories were true at the same time. Each said they knew the truth about a man who had spent his whole life telling the truth about people while being very private about himself. No one can argue that Jack hasn't worked in movies or TV shows since How Do You Know? Wrapped production, and the fact that he isn't going to the Lakers games like he used to means that his mental or physical abilities have changed in a big way. Many people have different ideas about whether he chose to withdraw from public life and live quietly in his last years or whether this is the result of a condition that is getting worse and making it impossible for him to interact with the world as he used to. The man who used to be so powerful and present on screen is now just a ghost, known for what he used to be rather than what he has become. It's possible that the way he lived during his work, which helped him become famous as someone who didn't apologize or hold back, also made his health worse in later years. His body was affected by the drugs and cigarettes he smoked, the late nights and high emotional demands of his job, and the substances he used for fun during and after the counterculture. Everyone's body is affected by these things, no matter how famous or talented they are. There is no way for anyone but Jack to say if he regrets any of these decisions or would live differently if he had a second chance. He has decided not to share these thoughts with the public. Fans and admirers are saddened by what they see as Jack's health getting worse. It's a painful warning that even the most important and seemingly unbreakable people get old and sick. The actor who played characters who were angry at death and limits and who refused to let them hold them back has now been limited by the ultimate limit of the aging process. It's especially sad that Jack Nicholson, of all people, is being silenced and pushed to the background, with his famous voice and presence reduced to memories and old video instead of being a real, living person in the world. Jack has lost a lot of things in his life, and the grief he feels isn't just normal for getting older. Going back to the traumatic event of finding out that everything he thought he knew about his family was a carefully built lie. When June Nicholson died in 1963, Jack was 26 years old and still trying to make it as an actor. He was sad because he thought she was his sister, but it turned out she was actually his mother. When he found out the truth 11 years later, this loss took on a whole new meaning, making his grief more complex and impossible to deal with. Not just for the person who died, but also for the connection that person never had and will never have. Ethel Mae Nicholson died in 1970. Jack thought she was his mother, but she was actually his grandmother. This happened right as his career was taking off after the success of 5 Easy Pieces. He felt like he had lost a mother when she died. He was sad about the woman who had raised him and shaped his early years, but he later found out that she had also been involved in the lie about his background. Finding out that the two most important women in his early life had both died before he could tell them the truth or try to understand why they made the choices they did created a psychological burden that Jack has rarely talked about in public but must have had a huge effect on how he understood trust, family ties, and being honest. When the reveal was made by a researcher for Time magazine in 1974, it was like death. The end of Jack's identity, which he had built around what he thought was his family past. When you're 37 years old, finding out that everything you thought you knew about who you are and where you come from was wrong leaves a hole in yourself that is hard to fix. In public, Jack's reaction to this finding was typical of him. He told interviewers that it was just a fact of life and that he didn't think about it much. But people who knew him said that the news affected him more than he realized, making his already complicated relationship with commitment and closeness even more complicated. Jack's love life has been intense and unstable at the same time. There were relationships that were very hot, but they often ended in breakups instead of stable partnerships. From 1962 to 1968, he was married to Sandra Knight, and they had a daughter together, Jennifer Nicholson. However, they got a divorce when Jack's business took off and his way of life became more and more incompatible with normal family life. Even though losing this marriage might not have been as devastating as losing a loved one, it did show that Jack's attempts at a regular family life did not work out, and it may have made him more interested in relationships that are not the norm. His relationship with Angelica Houston, daughter of director John Huston, lasted almost 17 years, from 1973 to 1990. They never got married, and during that time, Jack cheated on Angelica, and Angelica had a hard time accepting that he wouldn't commit to being faithful to one woman. Jack having a child with Rebecca Broussard while still seeing Angelica led to the end of the relationship. Angelica felt betrayed and said it was very disappointing. For Jack, losing Angelica meant the end of his longest relationship as an adult. She was the one person who really knew him and loved him despite his flaws. In conversations years later, they both talked about each other with love and regret, recognizing that what they had talked about was important, even if it couldn't last because Jack wasn't reliable anymore. The 2 children Jack had with Rebecca Broussard were born in 1990 and 1992, and are named Lorraine and Raymond. Their relationship also ended in the end. Jack was once again without a main partner, but his children put him in touch with a woman with whom he would need to keep up some kind of contact. It seemed like Jack couldn't find what he was looking for in romantic relationships within the structures that most people use to plan their intimate lives. He would get deeply involved with someone and then break up with them. Not only did each ending mean losing the woman, but it also meant losing the version of himself that he was when he was with her. Jack has had children with more than one woman, which makes his family structure unusual and complicated. Besides Jennifer, Lorraine, and Raymond, he is also the father of Honey Holman, who was born in 1981 to Danish model Winnie Holman. However, Jack's relationship with Honey was apparently distant when she was a child, and it only got closer later on. Another kind of absence and sadness is not being able to be involved in the daily lives of his children, especially those who lived far away or whose mothers were not his main partners. Knowing that his children were growing up without him around all the time, even though he had a job and way of life that made it hard for them to have the stable family environment they need. Jack was very sad when his close friend and regular work partner Dennis Hopper died in 2010. Symbolizing the death of someone who had been with him at the start of his success with Easy Rider and stayed a link to that time in his life when it changed everything. Hopper died after a long illness from prostate cancer. Jack is said to have been one of the people who visited him in his last days and saw how a man who had been as wild and rebellious as Jack himself eventually gave up to the same biological processes that kill everyone. As Jack got older, he lost more and more friends and co-workers to death. Each death was a lesson of how short life is and how an era ends. Jack was deeply affected by Marlon Brando's death in 2004. Brando had been both an inspiration and a cautionary story for Jack, as Brando was an incredibly talented actor who let anger and cynicism ruin his later career. Jack knew Brando directly and had studied his work a lot as a young actor trying to learn the craft. When Brando died, Jack lost a direct link to the method acting revolution that had changed the way American movies were performed. When Jack talked about Brando after he died, he was clearly sad, but also admired him. He may have also been aware of the dangers that artists who live too fully and burn too brightly faced. His health has been getting worse over the past few years, which is a more steady loss of the skills that made him who he was and allowed him to express himself through art. If the stories of dementia are true, Jack has lost or is losing his memories. He is losing his sense of self, no matter how hard he tries to hold on to it. This loss is not the same as death, but it is worse in some ways. As long as the person is physically present, their spirit will fade away. For someone whose job depended on their intelligence, wit, ability to connect with others emotionally, and presence, losing these skills while still alive may be more painful than being sick. People have said that Jack's relationship with his children in his later years was complicated, with different levels of closeness based on the child and the situation. Jennifer, his oldest daughter, has kept up a relationship with her dad and has talked about him with obvious love in interviews. She has also said that having Jack Nicholson as a dad had its challenges because of his fame and unusual way of life. The younger children, especially those with different mothers and who may not have had regular touch with Jack as kids, have their own problems getting along with a father who isn't there all the time. Even when he was there, his focus was split between his job, his many interactions, and his own thoughts and feelings. Losing his public life, like being able to go to Lakers games and be seen, known, and praised, is a different kind of death for someone whose identity was so closely linked to his fame and public status. People who knew Jack never seemed to mind being famous. Like many famous actors, he enjoyed the attention that came with being one of the most recognized in the world. He liked the courtside seats, the beautiful women, and being able to go places as Jack Nicholson. Having that taken away from him because of his age and illness, rather than his choice, must have felt like being kicked out of the life he built and the identity he lived for decades. The fact that he can't work or act may be the most painful thing. To do the thing that gave his life order and meaning and let him use his intelligence and emotional depth to make something beautiful and lasting. A singer who can't sing is like an artist who has lost their hearing or a painter who has lost their sight. The very heart of their identity was taken away, leaving them to face who they are without the thing that made them unique. How do you know? Jack's most recent movie did not do well at the box office or with critics. In other words, his amazing career finished not with a bang but with a whimper. Not very interesting romantic comedy that neither audiences nor reviews really cared about. He didn't have a farewell tour or final part that would have let him end his career with honor and purpose. Instead, he slowly faded away as he stopped working, appearing, and being the important presence he had been for so long. Today, Jack Nicholson lives alone at his longtime home on Mulholland Drive in Los Angeles. The huge compound has been his refuge for decades and is now his escape from the world he no longer actively acts in. Jack, who was born in 1937 and is now 87 years old, has stopped going out in public and has become a recluse. Fans and lovers are left wondering what happened to the man who used to be so magnetic and memorable on screen. Reports from people who say they know what's going on with him say that he's an old man whose memory is getting worse, who spends his days in a familiar place with workers taking care of his needs. His art collection, which includes works by Picasso, Matisse, and other great artists, stands as a silent reminder of a life full of love and respect for beauty. People outside of his close circle don't know if he still understands what these pieces mean or if they've just become decorations in a house he doesn't fully recognize anymore. His children visit when they can, but because of their busy lives and the distance between them, these visits may not happen very often. Jennifer Lorraine Raymond and Honey each have their own relationship with their famous father. They both deal with the difficulties of loving someone whose personality and presence have been completely changed by time and illness. Their father has changed from the lively and charismatic man they knew to an old man. They have to find any link that can be made while grieving the loss of who he was. Jack used to enjoy going to Lakers games and being around other people, but now they don't make him want to leave his house. His famous courtside seat, where he watched basketball with obvious love and interest for decades, is still filled with famous people and wealthy fans, but it's not the same without Jack. Those seats were more than just a spot to watch sports. They looked like thrones, and Jack sat on them. A public stage where he could be himself and be praised by everyone there. The fact that those seats are empty says more clearly than any public statement that Jack is no longer involved with the world. There have been no new movies, no sudden announcements of a comeback project, and no last part that would allow him to leave the stage with the honor and style that such an amazing career deserves. Nothing is there but silence and empty space. The slow fade that happens when someone who used to be everywhere stops being anywhere. Only retrospectives and showings of old movies can show what he was like instead of what he has become. The business he helped shape and grow has moved on without him. That's how industries work, they find new stars and legends while the old ones fade into history. For people who liked Jack's work and thought he made important contributions to movies, his current state is a sad finish to a story that should have had a better one. But maybe it's fitting that Jack Nicholson won't act out his decline for the public, keeping up the same defiance and refusal to conformity that made him famous in his best parts while he's not there. He doesn't owe everyone a well-planned goodbye or a brave public fight with illness. He has given enough over many years of acting that it will last as long as movies do. No matter how his last years go in private, his impact will live on. He changed what is possible in film acting forever with the characters he made, the performances he gave, the risks he took, and the limits he pushed. People in the future will find his work and be amazed by how smart and dangerous it is. The fun and kindness he brought to every part. It doesn't matter if Jack remembers these accomplishments or can still access memories of the work he did and the life he lived. What matters is that the work exists and is recorded on film so that anyone can see what great acting looks like. Jack Nicholson spends his last days away from cameras and people in his home on Mulholland Drive, which is filled with art and memories. He is cared for by caregivers and visited by family. The performer who showed us so much about people through his shows has chosen, or had chosen for him, to keep his own last part private. There is honor in that privacy, but there is also sadness in the quiet where there used to be a lot of lively noise and memorable presence.